All right, we're here at 125. And so what's going on here is we had the first class last time, and I talked about the nature of the CISSP and how this class is going to work. You're preparing to pass a test, and if you only want to pass the test, there's no point to do any hands-on work at all, because hands-on has nothing to do with the CISSP test. It's a management test. It's knowing concepts, knowing the terms, not knowing how to do anything, except decide which one you should choose as a strategic business model, and that's what it's about, management and business, and understanding enough technical terms to make judgments about things, but not how to really handle anything with your hands or set it up. And so we're going to form groups, and the groups will assign tasks to their members every week, and different groups will do different things. And like I say, if you really just care about passing this test right away, then you should just be doing practice tests. And what your group should do is get a good practice test, like the transgender test, and every week you should do like some problems, like 5 problems in there. That should be your project, which is fine with me. If you are not tied to taking the test right away, which I think is probably most of the class, considering the requirements and the cost, then you can do something else. And in previous generations, students have done security audits to the city college infrastructure. They have built little wireless gadgets to do man-in-the-middle attacks. They have put up vulnerable servers to get them hacked to steal malware samples off the internet. And we now have a direct internet connection for that purpose in the lab. Some other students have been setting up cloud services so that they can practice for cyber competitions. Other people are doing cyber competitions, which is all fine. It's some kind of practice in the world of security. But anyway, every week your manager will have to give you a task, and you have to give a report next week whether you did that task or not. That's the point. I also am going to have lectures and quizzes from the book, so we cover all the material in the book, but that'll only take about an hour out of every class. And after that, you should be, instead of me giving you my usual hands-on step-by-step projects, you will be tasked in your group by your manager. So the manager's job is to communicate with the group members so they know what they're supposed to do every week, and so you know if they did it. And they should all agree on something to do. And if you don't know what to do, either do problems from the book or do Pico CTF. If you've got no idea what to do, Pico CTF is a good thing for you to do. That's a lot of practice questions in security that will prepare you for cyber competitions. There's like 50 of them. They're very good. If you got no idea what to do a few problems with that every week. But it has Pico CTF. But they have to be, anyway, there has to be clarity. Everybody has to communicate, the manager has to communicate to the group every week so you know what you're supposed to do and they know if you did it or not. And it's perfectly fine if you connect remotely. You can come in remotely. The managers can be remote. This is the modern age. People should not have to drive to school. They should be able to connect over the internet with all these techniques. You got Skype, you got Zoom, you got email, you got chat, you got all the fancy stuff that I don't remember to use. There's just tons of it. Pick something and somehow communicate. But if you just vanish and do not talk to your manager at all for a couple of weeks, you're not going to be getting points because they have to be able to know whether you did your job. And if your manager is not making it clear what you should do, then let me know and I'll penalize your manager. So that's my plan. So I hope some people are interested in being managers, and there'll be a time for you to give pitches later. Let me just see, how many people came here to be managers? Only 2? Well, maybe a few more will be inspired. Other than that, it's going to be, I'll have to reorganize the class. In the past, there's been enough people interested in doing it. Maybe after these people pitch, you'll see it. Anyway, I'm going to cover the first chapter now. Yeah.
Do you think this book get now will be good for, say, a year from now?
Somebody told me the test is supposedly being updated soon, which is news to me. Therefore, theoretically, this book will not remain accurate. However, the previous updates changed nothing as far as I can tell.
As far as your classes you teach.
And as far as the test, and when I go to the next version of the book, it's just the same stuff. Their updates seem to be pretty fake to me, in my opinion. The only thing someone told me is the big debate is to go to adaptive testing, which would be nice. So maybe the test will no longer take 6 hours and 300 questions.
Maybe it's 3 now with computer adaptive testing.
What's that?
3 hours now with the computer-based testing.
Well, that's better.
Really?
6 hours was pretty annoying. Anyway, and having to wait 30 days for them to run the Scantron was kind of annoying too. And I thought the entire experience was designed to be as frustrating as possible, which I thought is the whole point of the CISSP. How to put up with an irritating, pointy-haired boss who just wastes your time for no reason. That was the main thing they were testing. Anyway, all right. Any other questions? Well, let's go on to chapter 2 then. The quiz was theoretically due this week, but like I say, you're not getting punished and people are still adding. You don't like to lose any points for being late on quizzes until February 6th. But if possible, I wanted you to do this quiz now. Many people have found they're not able to do the quizzes because they're adding, and the city college structure has not yet added them to the system, so they can't log into the quizzes, and I understand that. So if you're unable to take it, you won't lose any points. But in general, it's best to do the quiz on the chapter before the lecture. That leads to the best comprehension. That's why I made it that way. All right, so we're up to the first chapter 2A, which is the start of security and risk management. And this is, in the first part, I'm just going to do cornerstone information security contents. That's part of chapter 2. And the second part, I'll do a bunch of little topics. That's what seemed to split it approximately in half. So we're only going to do the part 1 part today. So this is basically a quick summary of Security Plus. As I mentioned before, the CISSP is A+, Net Plus, and Security Plus, plus about 3 chapters of management. That's what it is. So you've already been through 3/4 of it if you've been going through the program here. And that's why for IT professionals, getting a CISSP is pretty easy. For MBAs, it is pretty hard because they have to learn 3 courses worth of stuff, and it's pretty unfamiliar technical stuff. For us, you have to learn 1 course worth of unfamiliar management stuff, which I found pretty baffling, but you get used to it. I don't know anything about corporations. I've never worked in the big corporate structure, and that's what it's about. Anyway, so information security professionals try to create this thing called security. Creating security is like creating health. It is not something you achieve perfectly or ever have perfectly. It is just a relative condition. So you have a condition of security when people are able to do their job and get the work done, and there's not so much crime going on that they're losing money, and it's not so dangerous they can't walk down the street because they're afraid of getting shot and all that jazz. It's not like they're perfectly safe, but you hold the crime down to an acceptable level where you can afford the losses it's causing. And so you have assets you're protecting, there are risks that could hurt the assets, and you deploy safeguards to limit the risks that are really dangerous, and you don't bother to deploy safeguards against the risks that really don't matter, and that's the judgment of the security professional to do risk analysis and figure out how you can spend a reasonable amount of money to protect people and result in reasonable security, where the business succeeds because you're protecting yourself against the really bad risks and you're not wasting too much money defending yourself against stuff that doesn't matter. So that's risk analysis and mitigation. And in the language of leadership, this is total cost of ownership and return on investment. You have, this is what Microsoft has often said, and they're arguably quite correct, that if you deploy Linux, somebody will tell you Linux is free, and you will find out it is not free because nobody knows how to run it. So your staff has to be trained, and your network administrator doesn't know what they're doing, and it's hard to find a guy that knows what they're doing. And if you actually paid the licensing cost of Microsoft software and then hired readily available people with standard certifications and training, you would probably find that it actually cost you less total per year to run your company on Windows than it would on Linux. And people argue, but that's largely true. And not very many people, if you have Linux on a desktop, nobody wants Linux on a desktop. Unless you are a Linux server administrator and you want to stay in shape, nobody wants Linux on a desktop. They want Windows or Mac. And they're willing to pay the cost of it because it works, it's much easier to use. So anyway, that's the point. These are the arguments here. Total cost of ownership is how much it really costs you to use something, not just to buy it, but to maintain it, train your staff in it, put on the updates, deploy the antivirus and whatever else it needs. How much does it really cost you to have a Windows PC at work? And return on investment is if you invest in something like training the staff or a better firewall or an IDS, it costs a certain amount of money, and then how much did it save us? And that's the return on investment. Did we actually get more back by spending that money than we put in? In the world of security, ROI is almost always impossible to measure. If you deploy Palo Alto firewall that costs you $50,000, then you don't get hacked for a year. Well, do you really know that you didn't get hacked because of that firewall? Do you really know how much it would have cost you if you did get hacked? Do you really know you're not going to get hacked next year? Not really any of that stuff. So your estimate of how many dollars did we save by deploying it is really just pretty much a shot in the dark. Even how much it costs to get hacked is unbelievable. Some people have paid $200 a record when they get hacked. Other people have paid like 10 cents a record when they get hacked. Nobody can agree at all how much damage it does when you get hacked. It's just more complicated than that. It's like, you get hit by a car. How much is it going to hurt you? Well, some people are fine. Some people are dead. It's not that simple. Like there is one measure for how much harm this does. So, all right, so confidentiality is what keeps private data private, so unauthorized people can't see it, Integrity prevents unauthorized modification of data. Like we were talking about the blockchain. The whole point of the Bitcoin blockchain is you can make sure that nobody has been changing it. Once it's signed with a hash, you can quickly verify that none of those things have been altered. That's integrity. Availability makes sure that data is available when authorized people want to do the approved things with it. Your servers are not down, your network is not down, and so on. Those subjects are the active entities that work on the objects. You have an annualized loss expectancy, which is if you worry about one category of loss, like say fire, the building's burning down, you can figure out what the chance of that happening is. You can figure out how much damage it would probably do if it happened, and you can calculate how many dollars per year we expect to lose from fires. And then you can talk about deploying more fire extinguishers and how much it would cost to pay for them and how much they would lower the chance of fire and decide whether it's a good idea. So a threat is something bad that might happen without it being quantified. Just this is what the news is full of. You watch the news and it says terrorists are going to blow you up and your lettuce has poison in it and the government is going to steal all your money and the climate is changing and we're all going to die. And these are threats. Some bad thing might happen without any real measure of how likely it is or exactly how much harm it would do. And that's what amateurs do, is hear something scary and then run around doing something about it. But what professionals do is hear something scary and then evaluate it. There is a threat. Something bad might happen. Okay, now let's figure out how likely is it to happen, how much harm would it really do, what can we do about it, how much would that really cost. That's what you have to do if you want to run from just being scared of things and doing stupid responses down to doing calculated responses to protect yourself logically. So vulnerability is a weak spot, and a risk is something measured, how much harm you're actually going to get from a threat. So safeguards are mitigations that lower risks, and we've talked about total cost of ownership, how much it's going to cost to have something, and return on investment, how much you're going to get. You hopefully earn money by deploying safeguards. If the safeguard costs more than what it prevents, then you are foolish and you should not have it. Like you can hire a security guard and that will prevent certain kinds of crime, and it will also cost you some money, so hopefully the crime is going to do more harm than the price of the guard, or you're an idiot. You should just let the crime happen. Those are the concepts. Confidentiality, availability, and integrity are the three cornerstones of security, and if you increase one of them, you lower the others. If you want more confidentiality, you can have long, complex passwords. Now you lower availability because people keep forgetting their passwords, so your authorized users can't get in, and so it goes. You can increase one, but only at the expense of another. Of course, the other thing is money. If you have a lot of money, then you can have a lot of all three of these. But for a fixed amount of money, you can only have so much total. And so you can talk about the opposite. The opposite of integrity is alteration. The opposite of availability is destruction. And the opposite of confidentiality is disclosure. So you could just as well think in those terms and say you're balancing these harmful things to try to limit how much each one of them happens. And it's a custom thing for every company. You have to figure out what matters to you. Like if you're the CIA, you care about confidentiality more than almost anything else. It is super important that nobody finds out the secrets, and you really don't mind having low availability and having people constantly harassed and prove who they are and forget their password and stuff. But if you're a teaching college like this, you care more about availability than anything else. We have a lab like we have where everybody has the administrator password. There's no secrets. We just want students to be able to get on the machines. We don't really care much about integrity or confidentiality on those machines. So confidentiality keeps things secret. One of the things you want to protect is personally identifiable information of your people. If you let that get out, then you are in violation of the law and you have to go through breach disclosure notification, which is how Uber got in trouble. A hacker hacked and stole their data, and they just paid him a bribe to shut up about it and then didn't bother disclosing it, saying, well, we solved the problem. And they're now currently arguing in court whether that is a failure breach notification or not. And I guess we're going to find out. It's not that clear. If you trust the bad guy, and they apparently didn't use the data, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what they think of that. HIPAA and other frameworks of compliance have special rules you have to obey, and that's what you can get if you get a CISA, which is a class that will be coming here in a semester or two, taught by Richard Wu. That is half of a CISSP. CISSP is more difficult. The CISA is the Information Security Auditor. And that is the person that performs this compliance. It is like being a tax accountant. It's not considered terribly exciting, but you have to be able to go through your network, and there are like 100 things you have to do with health information. Make sure it's encrypted in transit, encrypted in storage, make sure the stuff is being shredded before it's thrown in the dumpster, make sure doors are locked, make sure only the authorized people go here and there, and you have to make sure all that is happening, and you have to have a system that monitors it so you can make a report, an audit report, proving that all that stuff has happened, and you have to submit it for your HIPAA compliance statement, just like you have a compliance statement about your taxes, and that takes manager types that are technical to make that happen. And that's the auditing profession. And I've had it recommended by security professionals that come visit here because they say if you want a work-life balance, if you would like to actually go home at 5 because there's something else that matters to you in life, like your kids or something, then you being an auditor is a pretty good job because it's not a constant emergency, like being a server administrator or a pen tester or something, where you have to stay till midnight and work every weekend. It's just auditing, so you're done at 5 and you can go home and pick up tomorrow. So, and you make a lot of money. But it's not considered as exciting or macho. Anyway, so confidentiality is keeping this stuff. So data, you have to have clearance to see data, formal access approval, and need to know are common issues to determine who's allowed to see data. Integrity makes sure nobody's been tampering with the data, so you want to make sure that unauthorized subjects are not modifying data, and you want to make sure that authorized subjects are not making malicious alterations or mistakes, and you want to maintain consistency so people don't somehow mix things up. Like referential integrity in databases is one common form of consistency. All right. So access controls are integrity controls to limit who's allowed to get to things. Making sure people authenticate is necessary so they prove who they are with something like a password or a fingerprint. Then you have IDSs and logging, and you can validate your object integrity. That's what blockchains have. They have this hash value at every block, so anybody can quickly make sure that nobody's been altering the block. And encryption and hashing also help protect integrity, primarily hashing. Encryption does not usually directly create integrity, but hashing does. It gives you a fingerprint so you can tell if the data has been modified. So integrity attacks are things that change the data, like viruses, unauthorized access, backdoors, and malicious modification of systems. So availability is just that the servers are up and usable by the authorized users trying to do what they should be doing. So you enhance availability by removing single points of failure. There shouldn't be one internet connection, one server, one router, one cable. There should be another one, and you have to prevent denial of service attacks, which are very, very common. Devices failure, software errors, heat, static, flooding, fire, earthquakes, all these things affect availability because your servers go down or they break the network connections between your devices. And of course, denial of service attacks and human errors all through the network. Amazon went down for 4 days about 8 years ago, and it was because they fouled up their own system. They were trying to put in a high availability system to detect excessive consumption of servers and prevent it. They were trying to increase their availability, and they got it backwards. So it took the server that was most busy and rerouted all the traffic to that server. So everything went down. And it took them 4 days to unsnarl it. This is very common, that when you try to fix something, the first thing you do makes it worse, which seems to be happening with Spectre and Meltdown too. It's something my boss taught me when I was in the escrow agency, is when you try to fix a problem, be very, very careful, because most of the time you're making it worse. It turns out to really be true. Anyway, so you prevent this with routers and proxies before to spread the traffic around, access controls, again, to limit who can get in, but mainly redundant systems and backups are what you use so that there is another device to take over for the one that's unavailable. And business continuity planning is planning to work around disasters. So what if the main building burns down and all that is gone? You don't just give up and shut the business. You have a plan. There is a backup. There is an alternate site. There is a alternate staff that can come in. We have, a plan so we can continue business after some tolerable amount of downtime rather than just giving up. So you balance these things. Like I say, if you increase one of the CIA, you lower some of the others to pay for it. That's the general rule. And so AAA services started with the pay telephone network. This is how you get enough information in order to send someone a phone bill. You have to authenticate people so you know who you are, then you authorize them so you know what they're allowed to do, and then you measure what they're doing with auditing or accounting. So you know who they called and how many minutes it was, and you can charge them. And the same thing applies to computer networks. There should be logs so you know who's doing what all the time. If you want to have PCI compliance, one of my students had to do this, had a company he was working for. They were having everybody log into the server as root on the Linux servers. And if you wanted PCI compliance, you have to knock that off. One of the formal rules is you cannot have any sharing of accounts. There must be one person on every account, and you must have a log of what they did, because as soon as you're handling money, there's going to be a question sooner or later, what happened to that money? And you'll want to know who logged in and did something with that money, and they don't want to hear, well, everybody uses root. That's not an acceptable situation. All right, we see how far it is to the Cahoots. I thought we were getting about time for the Cahoots, otherwise everyone's going to fall asleep on me. All right, so identification is just claiming to be somebody. Authentication is proving it with something like a password. Authorization is now that you've proven it, the system decides what you're allowed to do. And that's what I was saying about that, that hotel chain in Dubai. They didn't actually have authorization. They had a login page, and then they had an administration page, and if you just go straight there without passing through the login page, there's no real authorization. Just getting to the page is enough to give you privileges to mess with things, and that is a very common error called insecure direct object access in the OWASP top 10. What you should have is it should, before you access anything important, it should check to see who you are and whether you're on the access control list. But people frequently fail to do that. And then auditing, of course, logs what you did so that people can review it later if questions come up, as they always do when bad things happen. And accounting is the review of those log files later to find out how many bad things have happened and what are we going to do about it. So that's the AAA services that do those things. And here's one of the many examples of that. In 2009, there was this woman, the Octomom, that had 8 kids, and the hospital workers thought it was great fun. So they accessed her medical records and sold the data to tabloids like the National Enquirer so they could publish it to make money. And that is a clear violation of many laws. And they caught them by analyzing their logs. Which one of our employees was accessing her medical records, and they were not her doctor or somebody that really had any business to do it. That's why you do it. Because sooner or later somebody's going to do the bad thing, and your audit logs are going to help you cope with it. So I got a Kahoot. If you have a cell phone or a computer, you can do the Kahoot. I will turn on Zoom for the remote attendees. Just taught this class last semester at another college, so everything should be all ready to go. That was my theory. There we are, a number, 199,669. All right, a hacker defaces your web page. What's happened here? Okay, integrity has been compromised. They've modified something they shouldn't have been able to modify. All right, what do you get with fault-tolerant systems? All right, you get availability, that's the point of them. You can have a fault, which is when something breaks, but it is not a failure unless end users stop receiving service, and that's the point of fault-tolerant systems. A fault does not proceed to a failure. All right, so what does a username do? All right, that is identification. You're claiming to be somebody. You haven't proven it yet, but that's what a username does. All right. If there are errors in data entry, what has gone wrong? Okay, that is an integrity failure. All right. And what is an access control list for? Okay, that is authorization. Who's allowed to do what? Okay, I'm going to record the winners. Here's a good place to put winners. Moo will have to tell me who they are. Brandon G, that sounds like a real name. I might be able to figure out who that is. And D, not much clue there. I'm thinking it might. Anyway, by the end of class, somebody will have to tell me who they are. But let me just put it on my desktop. We haven't even been here an hour yet. I think we can go a few more of these slides. Might make it to the next Kahoots. All right, so here's other desirable properties that are not in the top 3, like non-repudiation, which means people cannot deny what they did later. This is important if you have a loan. You sign an agreement saying, I will pay you $1,000 a month, and if I don't pay, you can impound my car. So non-repudiation means you can't later say, no, that wasn't really me. So that's what digital signatures are for, and audit logs. So you have proof that somebody did something that they can't lie about it later. Least privilege. Least privilege is a desirable property where people have only the permissions they need to do their job and not extra permissions, so your help desk people are not all root on every machine and server so they can't get in trouble. A need to know is another issue. Even if someone is an administrator, they may not be working on this project, so you do not have a need to access that project. So this is called a horizontal control as opposed to a vertical control, also called siloing in the world of the military, where you have clearance like secret and top secret, but if you have top secret clearance, that doesn't mean you can see every top secret document, only the ones you need to know. And in the 1990s, US intelligence agencies were very big on horizontal siloing, so people did not talk to each other. And then, when the 9/11 attacks came, they said if you people had talked to each other, the FBI knew something and the CIA knew something and the foreign branch knew something, and they didn't talk to each other. So if you'd only all cooperated, you would have seen it coming. So they took down all the horizontal controls, and then Bradley Manning, who was only cleared for like confidential documents, was able to take them all and dump them at WikiLeaks. Stuff that had nothing to do with his area of knowledge because there was no longer any horizontal control. So now they put them back, and this is pretty much like you see it with the TSA. You have an attack, so you put in a control, you have another attack, so you put in another control. You just sort of lurch around trying to stop yesterday's attack. And it is kind of stupid, but that's the way it is. Anyway, so subjects are active things like people or computer programs trying to access things like files and servers and printers. Those are objects. Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer is a subject when it's running in memory, accessing files in your machine, but it's an object when not running, sitting on a disk, being affected by other things. So many, like if you decide if a machine is a server or a client, almost every machine is now both. It's in the middle. There is something below it that sees it as the server and something above it that sees it as the client. All right, so defense in depth is another fundamental issue. You shouldn't have just one layer of security. There should be a series of layers so that if you break through one layer, you can't get right to the really good stuff. There's more stuff in the way. So you have an enterprise class firewall protecting the whole network, and you also have software firewalls running on each device so that the attacker will have to penetrate both of them to get to the goodies. Do care means doing what a reasonable person would do. So you don't just leave soap on the floor and let people slip and fall, and you give people ladders so they're not just piling chairs on top of tables to change the light bulbs and stuff like that. That's due care, just not being an idiot. Due diligence is the management of due care. So you have people watching to see what people are doing and providing them with what they need. And this is the management making sure that due care is in fact happening. Well, I hear this frequently in financial world. People, before you buy a house, you have to check to make sure the person selling it to you actually owns the house. And before you invest in something like a cryptocurrency, you're supposed to do research to find out, are these people known crooks? Is there something really fishy? That's due diligence, where rather than just buying something without thinking about it, you check to see if the obvious things are wrong before investing money. Gross negligence is the opposite of due care, doing something that is not what a prudent person would do. And so if you get hacked and you lose PII, you will now have to defend yourself in court if people sue you and say you were careless with my data. Facebook lost all their data because the master database was sitting, storing unencrypted data on the server, and the master password was happiness. A common English letter with nothing fancy about it. And they were sued on the grounds that that is gross negligence. That is not a strong enough password. And I think that is the argument that did prevail in court, although I'm not quite sure how it came out. But they will try and argue that this was good enough, this is common business practice, we're as good as everybody else. And other people will try to say, no, you are the stupidest company in the world and you deserve to be punished because you're grossly negligent. So abstraction is the general thing in mathematics in the world of grouping similar things together. Instead of trying to treat each individual employee as a separate person and decide what they're allowed to do, you just sort them into categories: secretaries, help desk, manager, sales department, and then you give all the sales department access to this server but not that server, and so on. That's the efficient way to control things without going out of your mind, is to deal with abstract entities, groups. Then there's data hiding, where you put data in storage compartments. So you can have a database which is inaccessible to unauthorized users, and you can now have the high security database and the low security database and only let the low security people get at the low security one. Encryption, of course, scrambles data so people can't read it unless they have the key, and this is typically how you enforce confidentiality. You hopefully only let the authorized people have the key. So, here's Kahoot number 2, life is good. All right. So, why don't sales staff have administrative rights? All right, because they don't need it, so you give them least privilege. All right. Why do you use a ladder instead of climbing on the desk? All right, that's due care, just what a reasonable person would do. All right, janitors leave slippery slope on the floor. What's happened? All right, that's gross negligence. All right. Joe uses a printer. What's the printer? All right, Joe is a subject and the printer is an object. All right, I guess it's time to pick up again. We got a little more of this. There'll be enough time for the manager pitches. I think we ought to stay on track with the topic. So let me pick up here, and it's going faster after we get moving. So, all right. So security governance. These are the management side. And the goal here is to maintain your business processes while trying to be able to grow and handle the attacks. So there's regulatory compliance, which is obeying the laws. There's industry guidelines coming for your sector of business. And then there's license requirements for the software you use. These are various things you have to obey. And as I mentioned before, talking about auditing, you have to assess these things and verify that you're obeying the rules and be able to submit a compliance report proving that you did obey all the rules. You have a business case, which is your theoretical model of how your business should run. We make this, we sell it this way. And then you should have an argument to justify whatever you want to do. This is where security people tend to fail. The typical situation for security professionals is they're working at a company and there is something happening that bothers them. Like the passwords are wrong or the protocol is wrong or something or the firewall is wrong, and they cannot get management to care. They're screaming and yelling, there's this security problem, why is everyone ignoring me, my life is miserable, and they're getting more disgruntled and yelling and screaming, and the management just says, this guy seems to be insane, he's always screaming and yelling about nonsense, can we get rid of him and hire somebody that isn't going to bother me? And this is because you don't make your case properly, and that is the point of the CISSP, is your security professionals should understand management and know how to talk their language, and you should understand that your job is to figure out what you need and then to communicate it effectively to management so it gets changed. And if you're a genius and you spot the problem, but your communication skills are no good so it doesn't get fixed, then you are a failure. Communication is at least half of your job. And you cannot influence someone if you do not respect them. So if you hate your boss and you think he's an idiot, you need to quit and work somewhere else because you'll never succeed at that company. Because you have to be able to influence your boss. And if you come to them saying you're an idiot who screwed it up again, you're not going to be very successful convincing him to do it your way. Anyway, that's this thing. You make a documented business case that says, I did this by accident once. I was this typical disgruntled guy at a company running the databases, and the boss, I had no respect for him at all. I thought he was a bum and a crook. But he came by my desk one day. He handed out lottery tickets. Every time the lottery went above like $10 million, he'd hand out tickets. So he'd come to my desk and hand it out and say, if this hits, you won't be here tomorrow. I said, what do you mean? I got clients, I got customers, I got people claiming depending on me, I'll be here. He said, what's wrong with you? And I said, what's wrong with you? We had no communication at all. It was all about the money for him, and for me, it was all about the mission and the altruism. And so, but then he came by and I said, you know, I just calculated that we lost $200,000 last year from the flu because everybody went out sick for 2 weeks and we had to hire a bunch of temps and they did everything wrong and we had to do it over. And the next day he brought in a nurse to give everybody flu shots. That was the one time I did the right thing. That is making a business case. Here's the problem, here is how much it cost us, here's how much it would cost to fix it. That he understood perfectly. If I had only spoken that language to him, I would have been much more effective at getting the computer supplies I wanted. Anyway, so a top-down approach is what works. The CISSP is real big on this. If you want to implement some kind of security policy at your company, you have to have top-down. There has to be a champion at the C level that wants to do it. What you need to have, your boss needs to support what you're doing and then allocate resources to it and time and money. If you're at the bottom trying to push some security thing that management does not support, you will never succeed. And the CISSP has this all over the place. Never do this. Never have some guy at the bottom trying to change the company. You're just an idiot. You're going to fail. You're supposed to be smarter than that. What you have, you're at the bottom. What you have to do is what happened on the previous slide. You have to make a case to somebody at the top and convince them to champion your project. If you can't convince somebody high up to support you, then forget it. even if you're right about your firewall or whatever, just forget it. It's never going to happen until you successfully convince somebody that holds the purse strings to support it. Anyway, the chief security officer is the guy at the C level that handles security, and they report directly to the CTO, senior manager, that's the CEO typically, and they're outside the typical hierarchical structure. They're not supposed to be controlled by the direct profit motive and stuff. They're supposed to be watching security and monitoring it. So you have various plans. You have a strategic plan, which is a multi-year plan of how we're going to do something. Like Microsoft had this bomber started throwing around chairs and everything because he's figured out that these big, heavy desktop things are not going anywhere. Where it's all at is cell phones and tablets. And he said, we have to get on cell phones and tablets. That's our 5-year plan. That's why they created Windows 8 and everything. He said, we're going to be unimportant if we don't get on cell phones and tablets. And they failed to do that, and they became unimportant. All of that happened. Microsoft used to own the earth, 99% of everything. And now it's not that way anymore. Then you have tactical plans year by year and short operational plans to do shorter goals, like the military difference between strategy and tactics. Tactics are what you do in the short run, strategy is what you do in the long run. So that's your long-term goal. And your tactical plans are short things like projects and acquisitions and maintenance and such. And your operational plans are even shorter than that, just individual things. You have change control management. If you want to change routers and brands of servers and operating systems and stuff, then you have to plan it. You have to go before the change control board and convince them that whatever you plan to change is worth it and that the cost of it is going to be outweighed by the benefit it brings. When you implement a change of any type, you have to have a rollback plan. It is very, very common that you decide to upgrade to the next version of whatever, firewall or server or something. You spend a day and a half putting it in, and it just totally does not work. You cannot make it work at all. Something is horribly wrong. And what you have to do is, if you have a weekend, 2 days to do it, you figure out, I can only spend a day and a half putting it in because in half a day I can put the old one back. You have to have a rollback plan. Our attempt to upgrade failed. We roll back so that when we show up on Monday, something is working. At least it's as good as it used to be. That's important.
Question on Windows machines, if you're doing some kind of a install, and then sometimes automatically your machine will go into your restore point, but what's the value of that compared to like exporting your registry?
Well, the restore points are not even present on servers. They're only for client machines, and Microsoft restore points break your machine. Restore points are not complete backups, and they do not restore the metadata of files. So in fact, they don't take you back to a stable state. So in general, in enterprises, you don't mess around with things like that. You make image backups. So make a complete image backup of what you have, then do whatever the change is. Then if it crashes and burns, you restore from the image backup. That's the professional way to do it. Just like your laptop you buy now will have a partition with an image backup of the brand new condition, so that if you get it all infected and fouled up, you can just roll it back to the clean state. That's the best way to do it. All half measures like exporting the registry or doing restore point are for amateurs. The pros just make an image backup of the whole hard drive, and then you can get 100% back where you want to be with no messing around. So change control management is required for IT sec high levels. We're going to talk about these more. This is the Orange Book, I think. There's a color rainbow series of military documents, and the IT version comes here. Red Book or the Orange Book, I forget. It'll come up, and they have these A, B, C, and D levels of your maturity. And for the high levels, you have to have change control management. So you implement the change in a monitored and orderly manner. You have a testing process to make sure it worked. You have a rollback plan in case it didn't work. And then you inform users, especially the help desk, so they know what changed and they know what to do with the people that call that are confused about the change. And then you review it afterwards. This is the fundamental thing you're going to see over and over again in CISSP. Everything has to have a plan at the top, then you implement it, then you measure the results, then you improve the plan for next time based on what happened. You have to have a closed feedback loop because of Moore's law in IT, everything is changing really fast. So whatever you did this time is not really good enough next time. You have to have constant improvements just to move along with the industry as it moves. If you're constantly improving, that probably means you're just keeping up. That's why Microsoft used to say when they were 99% of the desktop, And they tried to sue them for antitrust. He said, you don't understand. We're 99% today. That's because we're running at top speed to stay on top of this rolling ball. And if we ever stumble, we'll be gone. It's not like we own it and we can trust that we own it. We're owning it because we're constantly running. And that was true. And they stumbled when tablets came out, and they did fall. Although they have record profits, they're making plenty of money, but they no longer own computers the way they used to. So there's data classification by a lot of things. How important data is, how useful it is, how much damage it would do if it leaked out. This is how you have to evaluate how important it is to protect your access. So you have to have a custodian, who is the person that is going to put the labels on the data and such. You have to have evaluation criteria, label everything, trash cans, servers, tapes, paper, everything has to be labeled with what it is it top secret, secret, classified, or whatever. Have your controls, classification procedures, and then train your staff. You cannot put the top secret paper in the secret trash can. It has to go in the top secret trash can, all that jazz. So the military uses unclassified, classified or confidential, then secret and top secret. Businesses typically use like public, sensitive, and confidential. It's not completely standardized what they use, but they do have these levels, and you have to stamp every digital and paper artifact with these labels so people know what it is. So your senior manager is responsible for the security of the organization. This is entertaining. When somebody got hacked last semester, they tried to blame, it was Target, I think. Who is it got hacked through the content management system that they failed to update? I forget the name of the company. When the major companies got hacked, there was
that was Target.
which one was it?
That was Target.
Equifax. It was Equifax. They failed to update their like Java-based web platform. It was out of date. What was it?
Apache Struts.
Apache Struts, thank you. I'm glad you got it. They failed to update Struts, so they got hacked with a known vulnerability. And the management tried to say it was the IT guy that didn't put on the update. And in the CISSP land, that will not fly. If you're the manager and you hired an idiot and let the idiot do it wrong, the manager is to blame. It was your job to make sure that your staff was doing it. And if they're idiots, you're supposed to fire them and hire better staff or train them. You're supposed to review what they do. You can't say, my idiot staff did it wrong, so it's not my fault. It's your fault that you put idiot staff in charge and let them do it wrong. Anyway, that's the point. They're ultimately responsible for success, defending the data. Then security professionals are who they've hired to write these things, and data owners are people responsible for classifying the information. But all of them are being overseen by senior management, and if they screw up, senior management is still at fault. Then the custodian implements the protections. They actually make the backups, label the data and such. Users are down here using the data and hopefully knowing what they're allowed to use and what they aren't allowed to use. And then you have an auditor, like I've described a few times. This is the CISA, the guy who produces, or woman who produces the proof that you have obeyed all the rules. So you can submit that to various people that come to inspect you, like what happens at Equifax. After you get hacked, there's going to be lawyers and government officials and everybody coming in, all right, what are you idiots doing here? Let's see a report of what you really did, and then we can start deciding what we want to do to punish you for doing things wrong. All right, you got, there are various administrative frameworks available to organize this. COBIT is one of them from ISACA, a company I think they're in town too, where you meet stakeholder needs, cover the enterprise, have an integrated framework, and so on. These are general ways to organize your management. That's COBIT has a document and training videos and everything of how to organize your management this way. There are other frameworks also. So I got another Kahoot. What system, which one of these is useful for a year? All right, that's the tactic. The tactic goes for a year. Your strategic plan goes for something like 5 years. All right, who's ultimately responsible for the security of your organization? Okay, the manager is responsible for making sure that all the people they are managing actually do things right. All right. Who makes backups? Okay, that's the custodian. The data custodian actually does the work. The other people are just overseeing. All right? Who makes compliance reports? That's the auditor. Good. All right. That's their job. Okay. Let me record the winners. Got one more section. All right. So here's security structure. You got policies, standards, guidelines, and procedures. Policies are general statements assigning responsibility and your enforcement process, and this is what you use to prove that you exercise due care. We have a policy against that, and policies are compulsory. You must obey the policy. You can have organizational policies that apply to the organization as a whole, specific policies to one thing or another, and even system specifics applying to one device, like a firewall. You can have regulatory policies, which are to obey rules that come from government or large industry bodies like PCI DSS that just has a set of standards you must obey. Advisory policies that are not required and just that specify acceptable activities and the consequences of violations, and then informative policies that are even less compulsory. Then there are standards. These are the courses of action to implement things. These are when you choose. We standardize on one brand of something, one type of something. And then baselines refer to the level of security required. Microsoft has a bunch of security baselines recommended for domain controllers and file servers and everything, and there are other companies that do it. The military has their TC-SEC. The National Institute of Standards has ones available for people that do business with governments or that feel like obeying their standards. These are just recommended levels of security. And then there are guidelines, which can be customized, how to meet the standards and the baselines. And then there are procedures, like my projects in the other class, detailed step-by-step instructions of exactly how to do things. When I became the network administrator at the escrow agency, I was trained by a guy above me, and he just showed me how to do everything. And my first contribution to the company was I wrote down the step-by-step procedures for everything, which did not exist. He was just all in his head. And that offended me, and I wrote instructions in a little book, and that was my big accomplishment that they liked around there. Anyway, threat modeling, I talk about a lot. You can't just achieve security. You have to decide what exact threat you're talking about, and then what controls might limit that threat. So you have to ask what could happen, and what do we really care about? That's threat modeling. So try to figure out what might happen, how likely it is, how important it is, and then what you can do to lower the threat. Proactive threat modeling is where you try to project the future. Very uncertain. This would be the cheapest and safest procedure if you could only do it well. So you try to guess what might go wrong. Microsoft works real hard at this with their security development lifecycle. They try to consider security at every stage of design because they have been burned so many times with security problems that they have the most mature security prevention process because they've been forced to. They've been humiliated for decades with their lousy security until they really improved it a lot. Reactive threat modeling is what you usually have where you don't see something coming, it happens, and then you, like the TSA, somebody put a bomb in his shoe, so now you have to take off your shoes. Somebody put his bomb in a water bottle, now you have to take off your water bottle. This is reactive threat modeling where you try to stop yesterday's attack. And this is what you get with penetration testing and such. Yeah.
How is the TSA's cybersecurity?
Abysmal. As a matter of fact, all their security is abysmal. They had an audit testing to see if they could detect guns, and they found that 95% of the time the guns get through. And people freaked out, and they said, well, wait a minute now. The previous test was 98%. We've gotten better. But their cybersecurity is appalling. Those scanners are running on Windows 98 with fixed, unchangeable default passwords, and everything else is just amazingly bad. Anyway, almost all government agencies are amazingly bad. About 5 years ago, they started specifying government security regulations and auditing them, and every year they report 95% out of compliance. They have figured out what they should do, but they're miles away from actually doing it. Anyway, you can identify threats where you find your assets. You can do it by focusing on assets. You can do it by focusing on attackers and trying to figure out who's attacking you. You can focus on your software. There are just many ways to go about it. Microsoft has this thing called STRIDE, spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege, just a way to categorize threats as which one of these things it might be. Some people like to diagram attacks, so you've got users going in and logging out. Now they're inside your network. Once they're in this web servlet, they then have to be authenticated over here. And if you take the 129S, protecting websites class, we talk about this a lot. They call it boundary-based security, where instead of just trying to have one stage where you take out all the badness, you have to consider what this server is accepting as input and what it's putting out as output and what this one expects, and then can validate and test the data at every time it moves from one system to the next. That's the way you can prevent threats. Instead of trying, because bad is relative. Bad for one server is not bad for the other server. Anyway, then there's reduction analysis. You divide your system into smaller containers and make these trust boundaries and flow paths, and then you talk about what's coming in here and what it's passing on to the next step. And we do that in 129S. All right, so prioritization is where you document the threats and now you decide how dangerous they are. If it were in a perfect world, you would know how many dollars each one of them is going to cost you. In reality, you probably can't do that well, so you just have like high, medium, and low risk. But you somehow decide which ones you're going to spend money to prevent and which ones you're not going to spend money to prevent. Here's another model with DREAD, damage projection, potential reproducibility, exploitability, affected users, and discoverability. These are just various ways to try to categorize all the threats and somehow decide which ones are more important than the other ones. If you buy things from other people, you can inherit security problems from them. This is a huge problem. Your libraries have flaws that you didn't know about. Now you're not supposed to use Huawei routers and switches because the Chinese government might have put backdoors in it. You're not supposed to use Kaspersky antivirus because it sends your files back to Kaspersky where the Russian government steals them, which happens. So it's a problem. You're trusting other companies and their risks are your risks, so it's an issue. So it'd be a good idea to be careful what you buy, and that's part of your total cost of ownership. If you buy sleazy products you base your product on, you've created a problem for yourself. And this also applies to the people you outsource to. Kaiser Permanente wanted to type in medical data, so they hired a data entry firm, and unbeknownst to them, that data entry firm outsourced it to Pakistan, where they had people in Pakistan typing it in for $1 a day, and they didn't even pay them their $1 a day. So one of the women in Pakistan got fed up, and she sent an email to Kaiser saying, I'm going to dump your records publicly if you don't pay me my $1 a day. And they said, who is this person? And why do they have our data? She included some records. They say, how did our data get to Pakistan? What's going on here? This happens a lot. You hire a company, they do something awful, you're still responsible. You can outsource work, but you cannot outsource responsibility. If you take your data and hand it to some lunatic who does something horrible, you're still responsible. You were supposed to be overseeing what the lunatics you outsource to are doing and limiting how crazy it gets, instead of just going for the lowest price and not worrying about the details. Anyway, you can have, so to evaluate your third party, it would be nice if you can actually visit them and see what they're doing. There was an expose in London I saw a while ago where they had these call centers, call now and give us your credit card, and they showed these people in India just at the call center, writing down the credit cards, working all day, then going out and selling the list of credit card numbers to crooks on the street. And they said this is not even a crime in India, commonly done. So I mean, if you're not actually visiting them, it's kind of hard to know what they're doing. Anyway, so that's why a lot of people outsourced, and then they decided maybe that wasn't such a brilliant idea after all. Maybe the total cost of outsourcing wasn't as low as they thought it was. Anyway, there's the last one. That gets us on track. All right. All right, step-by-step instructions. Are those your procedures? All right. What's the most common type of policy? All right, that's advisory. That's a tough one. This management stuff is just like meaningless gobbledygook to me, and you have to sort of get used to it. You have to sort of pound it in. That was the hard for me, which is how the poor MBAs feel about all the technical stuff. So, you know, we get to feel their pain a little. So, what process leads to updates? That makes sense. It's reactive. The update comes after the attack, right? You know that something bad is happening. Your proactive threat modeling would somehow stop it before the attack, and of course that would be swell, but it's usually not possible. All right. What process finds trust boundaries and data flow paths? Okay, that is reduction analysis. It's not threat modeling. Threat modeling is focusing on what might happen. This is analyzing your system, breaking it up into components. Anyway, they call that reduction analysis. So Let me record these winners, and let's see what we have in the way of people interested in leading teams. If you don't have enough of them, I may have to restructure the class. So I know there were at least 2 managers. Are there any more? Just 2 managers? Well, why don't you come tell us about what you propose? Do you need a computer?
I've got mine.
Okay, good. See if you can connect it to any of this stuff and project it.
Hi, my name is John Emery, and I named my team Nehedku Cow. It's the Egyptian god of protection and magic, and I thought that had a lot to do with IT. It's a lot of similarities there. I like to make my kind of teams interesting. So first, I'm going to give you an overview of what I'm going to present to you. The most important part is why, and I'm sure you're wondering about the team name, and more importantly, why would you want me to be your team leader? And then I'm going to cover the what the goal of the team is, and then I'm going to cover the how we're going to organize, how we're going to communicate, and basically recruit team members. And then I'm going to have a Q&A, so give you time at the end if you have any questions. So the overview of the name is Nehedku was the Egyptian god that brought the spirit to the body. And I thought that was very akin to authentication. You've got a person, and your identity on the network is your spirit, basically. So he was supposedly one of the original gods. He was there with Ra, and he protected Ra in the daytime and the night, and he also protected the living and the dead. And that's also akin to what an IT person does. Usually you're the first person that anybody sees when they get hired. You create their account, and you're the last person that they see on the way out. You lock their password. And you're also responsible for the protection of the entire network, even after you're dead. So basically, I thought it had a lot to do with IT, so hence the name. So the next part is why me? And the first part is I love technology. It started as a childhood hobby and became my life's passion and career direction. True story. When I was a kid, my dad made a deal with me. He's like, I'll buy you your first computer if you dig me a pond. And I learned 2 important lessons in that. Make sure you understand the scale and the scope of the project before you commit to anything. And number 2 is some things that are really hard work are worth doing. It became my life's career. My dad has enjoyed that pond for 30 years, so it was truly worth doing. The pond I thought was going to be the size of maybe a desk here. It's probably about the size of this room. It took me all summer long. It was a horrendous project. So my background in IT, I worked in the help desk for 5 years. I was a server manager for 5 years. I led projects, rollout projects. And for the last 3, I worked as a network engineer, and I replaced an entire enterprise network, Cisco network. It was really fun. I was also, big companies roll out these methodologies, and the favorite one of the year was the Six Sigma. It's really popular with manufacturing companies to eliminate defects in manufacturing processes. The idea is when you make 1,000 widgets, if you get 1 wrong, that's okay, but if you get 100 wrong, you're really costing a lot of money. So that's what that's about. I just completed my BS in computer engineering this last year, and you're right, it's a lot of stuff that basically they bark and you have to, jump, and this is how high. So I've gone to the mountain. And I'm currently looking for work in IT, so if you're out there and you're looking for somebody that is motivated, got some experience, needs a new start, that would be me. So, now the what? The team goals. I am very interested in getting the certification, but as an incidental, I'm also interested in getting an A in the class, which means I will manage this project to the best of my abilities, and I will make it easy for you to accomplish your goals when you are a part of my team. So what we're going to be focused in on is preparing for the certification exam, and that means we're going to read the information in the book, we're going to complete the practice tests and take the weekly quizzes so that we get all the points for that and get the A. So the how, I've worked on a lot of team projects in school, and Slack became the go-to thing. A lot of us were working and doing school, and basically it's an easy way to communicate. It's not real time, it's like email, you just send a message and whenever we log in, we get to it. It's very good. And the really cool thing that I plan on using, Google has an app for Slack called SnippetsBot. They use it internally. Basically, I can send a note and assign you tasks on Monday, I think. And then by Friday, you just reply back done and the name of the task. And it automatically generates the status report that this guy needs. So it's easy for me to communicate to you and for you to communicate back. Zero kind of effort. So, the command that I actually type in to do that is next. Read chapter 1, take the practice test, and take the quiz before the class. The team members reply with a done. I read it. I scored 100%. I took the quiz. So that's basically how we want to communicate. I've got a number of team members that were interested in the very first class.
Good.
I've established a meeting room on Slack and invited most of these people. There may be a few more. Depends on how big we want these teams are. I'm open to more. It's just as easy to manage 15 as it is to manage one, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, if you're willing to take them, if they want to do it, it's fine. This is certainly one good way to go.
Yeah.
Just focus on a test. Don't try anything else.
Yes.
That's
if you're
fine.
Interested in taking the certification, this is the way to go. If you're not interested in taking the test and you want to do something else more interesting, then maybe another team would be for you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, but the chapters, they have the answers on there.
The ones in the book do. The Transcender program is the one that we're planning on using, and that's like an online thing, and the answers are not there. You have to actually take the online test. Yes, sir.
What is your goal in this? Why do you want to be a manager?
My goal, to gain experience using kind of a more agile project management approach. I'm used to let's think about this for a million years before we ever even step out of the gate, and this is using the online tools to get kind of status updates, and it's more of a hands-off approach. I want to try it out. Yes?
What's the practice tests?
The practice tests are in Transcenders. It's the program that he recommended to help review.
Is that the paid program that you like to?
Yeah, it's like $159. I think we're gonna figure out a way to access that and share
As a
one
group,
copy
kinda.
as a group, as opposed to everybody buying it. It's ridiculous to buy it, and we could share it, sort of.
Yep, some people will complain about the copyright violation or something, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, we can use a concurrent use machine somewhere and just put it out there and share it.
Yeah,
It'll be theoretically.
that would be the completely legal. But
Yes, exactly.
Quick question. So there is an official ISC score practice test.
I've heard there is. I haven't tried it.
Oh yeah. So
That would be another option.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
I'm open.
kind of big book and it has lots of
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
you might want to go for that. I don't know. Transcender, I think, is the one with the best reputation. I think it's considered the best, and I certainly liked it. But I haven't tried this other one. It might be good too.
Yeah, it's very cheap. It's $25 on Amazon. So
Yeah, usually the cheap ones are too hard because they don't want people complaining.
That is the part.
Yeah.
That's a person, and it
There you go.
just goes on and on and on.
Oh, good.
So yes, that was what got me into computers.
Well, good.
And he's got koi in there that are over 10 years old.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And it is literally his favorite thing in the yard. So, it was well worth every aspect of this. Looking back, was well worth it. I was hating life the entire summer, though. He gave me a shovel, and I had blisters on my hands for the entire.
There you go.
Yeah.
Laid the concrete yourself. and
It's-
everything?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. All right. Anybody else have any more questions?
It's just a little thing. What did you replace this Cisco gear with?
Actually, what we had was a network that grew organically without any planning. It was a mixed vendor system. It crashed about every 2 weeks. We had 1,000 engineers that couldn't bill their hours because their simulations would crash. Our entire IT department had a miserable reputation, and we ended up replacing it with a very nice Cisco dual cord 6509, distributed 5500s in the wiring closets, and then 2924s in the actually in the ends of the aisles of the cubes. Because the wiring closets, I mean, they were already filled with the old junk. We had to keep both systems running, so it was an awesome project.
But you went to Cisco.
Yes, we went to Cisco from it was a DEC
Yeah.
and something else like HP ProCurve. It was a nightmare. Spanning tree didn't even work. You know, somebody plug in a hub in building 5 and the whole thing crashed.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Well, good.
all right. Thank you so much.
Now I know we have at least one other person that wants to lead a team. That's you? Good, okay.
I emailed you the link.
Oh, good. If you did, then I can open it up on this machine, which will theoretically project and all that better. Let's see.
So my name is Jeff, and the purpose of my presentation is to pitch to you why I would like to have a team made up solely for the vision of taking the Transcender test.
Okay.
That's all we're going to do. We're going to divide up the work at the first meeting and eventually just determine how to answer the questions, perhaps even importing the questions into Kahoot. The whole exercise, right, is all psychological, about taking the test. I think many of us in here have taken plenty of these workplace exams, and we understand the timing function and how to divide up your time to eventually pass the test. And it ultimately comes back down to just having a technique of process of elimination and managing your time. And of course, being in some physical and mental state to take the test. So those are the usually 3 factors that allow you to pass the test. So in this particular case, I just named the team XX Incorporated, and the primary premise to bring a collective body together is to reduce the psychological, is to prepare you mentally. And so when you start sharing things with other people, eventually the trust helps build is self-efficacy, because you start building trust in yourself once you start explaining something to other people. And I kept thinking of Ms. Sandberg and what she was trying to present in her book, Lean In, was to do that. Just stand up, present something to somebody, and then eventually the collective group will be better off because you've been able to explain something of importance that eventually the group adhered to. However, the other thing I've learned in my military background is that you've got to have followers. You know, so the group has to have followers. If there are no followers in the group, there is no group. And so that's what I carry this around with me, this quote, that you need to lead when you need to and follow when you should. And leadership is just as paramount as followership. And so I think that through being your individual curiosity, persistence, communication, and analysis will help you form a better, stronger bond in the group. And the next slide just describes a little bit about myself. Those are all my credentials, and this is what I've done in life. And basically, I think that we're going to XX Inc. is going to be completely and solely focused on taking the exam. That way, when you know that you've set 1 hour aside a week, that's all you're doing for that 1 hour. And we know that the entire corporation and group is designed, and all the co-founders of the group are designed solely only to take the test and do at least 1 hour per week on the taking questions on the exam.
All right, and how many people do you want?
I think a small group would facilitate enough.
So what's a small group?
I would say less than 10.
Okay, fair enough. Well, all right. So both of these guys, I think, are prime examples of a CISSP, and they're going to go to management and go far. They're going to fit. That's exactly what you expect, and I think that's fine. Now, in previous semesters of this class, there were a lot of students who did not really want to take a test right away, and if so, there was currently no group for you to work in. So I'm going to not count the first task. You guys can go ahead and join these groups and do the first task. It'll count as extra credit. I'm not going to require it because I think we need another week for people to appear. If there are people who want to do something other than narrowly focus on the test, you will have to speak up. You want to try it? You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Because in previous times, like 3/4 of the class did other things. So I don't know if you guys all want to do the test, but anyway, go ahead. If you have another idea, let's hear it.
Yeah, I really want to do the hands-on stuff, so I kind of want to piggyback on some of your other classes, like the 140 class, which is CTF competition training.
Yeah.
Some of the other classes that I'm in on Saturdays, like the 127 and 129, which are like website hacking and stuff. And I really want to kind of just make this an extension of the Hackers Club.
Yeah, which suit me. Then you do CTFs or something.
Yeah, basically train for CTFs and work on hands-on stuff.
Yep, that's good.
Not well defined yet because I figured someone else would have this idea, but I really want to do it, so I'll step forward.
We're doing very well in competitions. I'm very happy more students want to do it. And you had one over here? Was it you?
Question.
Yeah.
Talk about the test that the two books talked about.
The what?
The test.
What about it?
He wants to know more information about that.
Practice test?
Yeah,
They're both talking about the transcender, which is what I recommended. The transcender is the gold standard.
what kind of books and what kind of tests they can read?
Well, the book, there's no book. It's just an online test. It's a practice test.
You were saying the readings are on online, right?
Yeah, well, the transcender is a practice test, and after you answer each one, you can then review it, and it has a whole page of writing about each question, explaining why each wrong answer is wrong and why the right answer is right.
But how come they're talking about different chapters?
The book. In my case, the chapters of the book.
Yeah, he's going to focus on your textbook. He was just going to do the transcender.
Which book? You talk about
The textbook for the class.
textbook for this class?
Yeah. Yeah, so he,
I just want to solely focus on taking the test.
Right.
That's why I'm in this class.
yeah,
That's why I'm going to pile out the $600 to take the test
yeah,
because I need to take the test.
yeah, that's right.
That's the only way I'm going to get paid.
Yeah, and that's the point. And if you don't take the test now, if you go into information security, you'll have to take it later. However, you might want to wait until you have a job and your boss is paying for it or something. But sooner or later, you won't proceed without having this cert, largely in this business. Except there are some shops like NCC that couldn't care less. They said they don't care if you passed high school or anything. They just care about your hacker skills. There are some jobs like that. But most corporate type jobs totally require this cert, or you hit a glass ceiling. Anyway, this is the book he was talking about. He's going to focus on this book as well as the practice test. You were talking about just the practice test. That's a pretty small difference, but it's fine. But they both have the right goal, which is just keep going over and over the material one way and another until you really get it, which is fine. So, yeah.
You were talking about quizzes too, right? For each chapter?
Yeah, well, the quizzes I have assigned anyway. Just making sure you do them, I think.
Yeah.
But you might have, but there's also, I think, practice questions in the book you could be doing. Your textbook has some practice questions too you could use.
Yeah, I was mainly looking to get an A in the class, so you've got to read the book and take the quiz.
You do. That's fine.
Yes.
Making sure they do that is good. Anyway, so if you guys want to join one of these teams and do something for next week, that'll count for extra credit, and I'll hear from these managers, but I'm not going to enforce it because I think there may be more teams appearing by next week. Think about if all this is not right for you and you have another idea, present it next week. And then I'll start counting after that. I hope I have a reasonable chance for everybody to get in a group. All right, and if you don't care about the grade, of course it doesn't matter at all, but most people want to do some kind of hands-on. It's just too dry to do nothing but study the book. And even if you are just trying to pass the test, you have to have something like a practice test to make it a little different so you don't go out of your mind. But most students who aren't going to take the test right away, They learn enough about it from the book, and they'd also like to build a gadget or something, or do a CTF or something. Any questions about anything? All right, well, I guess that's it. I'm going to go over to the lab and see if anybody needs help over there. We now have plenty of lab monitors, so it probably isn't directly relevant to this class, but it's more relevant to people who are going to do like CTFs and stuff. But we got a lot of open lab hours now in Science 214, so I could use a couple more lab monitors if people want to volunteer, but we got a pretty good set of them, so by next week, we'll have it open pretty much all the time. You want to open the lab?
No, I mean, what are your office hours?
I'm there. I go there after class, which is like 8 o'clock Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and some Thursdays, and I'm there all day Saturday.
What do you want me to say? 9 to...
Yeah, I teach classes, one class from 10 to 1, and another one from 1 to 4 on Saturday, and I'm in the lab when I'm not lecturing, Science 37. So I'm in the building all day Saturday. I have to be, because otherwise the janitor will send the police to close the lab down. The janitors are not on board with our mission at all here. They just want to go home and not do their job, so you have to like battle them back.
What's the hours for a lab monitor?
Well, I'd like people to take at least 4 hours, just because I only have so many keys. That's all. So pick any 4 hours or more, and that aren't in use, and I'll take them. And some of these people, some people agree to be tutors, which is also good. Dylan has so far, which means if you're a lab monitor, all that means is you have to show up and unlock the door. But if you're willing to be a tutor, then you're agreeing to help students with their projects and stuff, and that would be even better. But not everybody is willing to do that. Dylan was. He's pretty experienced. He's very good at troubleshooting anything. So he's a good tutor. But a lot of people just don't want to take on that responsibility. They want to be working on their own stuff, which is fine. Opening the door is enough. By the way, I should also mention this is all technically illegal. The college says we can't have an open lab without a teacher being there. They've just gotten used to me breaking that rule. But if you go and I've had people actually go to the police to ask questions about their key. And then, of course, I get in trouble. So you should be aware that this is technically an underground forbidden activity. Most things I do are. And don't go rubbing the campus cop's face in the fact that you're breaking the rules.
Are you still recording?
What's that? Yeah, they might be recording, but I'm not. Well, yeah, but that's all right. It's not a matter of whether you break the rule. It's a matter of whether you force them to do something about it. Like before pot was legal, you could smoke pot on the street, and the cops are like, dude, go behind a bush. They don't really care. But if you force them to notice, then they'll have to do something. This is true of a lot of things, of compliance and management. Like, you don't want to bother the administration with things they'd rather not know. They do it around the president a lot. They carefully don't tell the president things so he can say, I didn't know about it. That's a big issue up there. That's why one thing I've heard about the briefings, I think before Obama, the guy was going to say, listen, you got to understand, you're going to a briefing of the president. If he asks you a question, carefully answer exactly that question and then shut up. Because he is supposed to not know certain things. And you're going to ruin everything if he has to carry the burden of knowing too much. Anyway. All right, I'll clean up and go up to the lab. And that's how it'll do for this week.
Thank you.